Do you know the difference between the Tai Chi movement raise hands and the Tai Chi movement play pipa? They're almost just mirror images of each other, but in a very important way, they're very different. Hi everybody, it's David-Dorian Ross and welcome to the Cherry Blossom Studios. Today is day number 23 of 100 days of Tai Chi, and in today's video lesson, I'm going to talk about what's the difference between these two movements that look so similar. Also got a brand new movement, one that's going to slide into the repertoire of movements, and that's kind of a pun. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. Anyway, all that's coming up in just a second. Following needle at the bottom of the C, the next movement in sequence is movement number 27, which is called Shunt Bombay. So Shunt Bombay translates very interestingly. So shun could be a fan. So sometimes this movement is called fanning, and then bei means the back. So the spine, the back that you run the chi up and down your spine. So this is sometimes translated as fanning through the back. But shun also sometimes means to slide, and that's sort of the action of the fan, to slide apart. So here we see a movement that slides along the arms through the back. So bear that in mind when you watch the action and when you think about the energy that's going from one extremity through to the other extremity, sliding through the back or opening up like a fan. And this is what it looks like from the end of needle at the C bottom. As you can see, it's a one-stepper, so it should be pretty easy to break down. Let me break it down facing this direction, then I'm going to turn around and face the camera. We'll do our little magic with the video so that we can flip it around and you can follow me mirror image. But let's just break it down piece by piece, starting in this direction. So we're starting in an empty step, and this is the end of needle at the bottom of the C. From here, what you're going to do is take the left foot and step forward into a bow step, which means you have to make it wider and a little longer. Bend the front knee, shifting the center of gravity forward to create that Tai Chi lunge, the bow step. By the way, in case you have skipped over one of the videos, the name of this movement, translated into English, is the bow step, short for bow and arrow. And it partly describes the sort of the curved nature of the legs. It also refers to the idea that in each of the legs and each of the arms and in the spine, there's a sort of tension, there's a sort of push-pull that's going on, just like drawing the string of a bow back, which is what gives it the energy to push energy out in front. So this is a bow step or bow and arrow step, a Tai Chi lunge, right? And there's just one, you just step right forward, that's all there is. If I turn to face you here I am. Flip the video. All right, now you can just do what you see. Here I've got my left foot forward in an empty step, which means there's no weight on it. I'm coming from the descended angle of needle to C bottom, and I stand up straight. So I'm back to my regular posture. The left foot then steps both forward and out to the side slightly to make a bow and arrow step, shifting the weight forward to finally finish in a lunge, right? One more time, just make sure I'm in the camera there. From the empty step, stand up, step out into the side, lunge. Now, let's take a look at what the arms are doing. So in the beginning, the right hand is down facing the earth here. This is looking for the needle, like you're sort of moving the sand around on the bottom of the seafloor, looking for that little needle that might turn into the Monkey King's magic staff. It rises up and begins to slowly rotate the palm out. In phase one of this, before you take your step, it hasn't fully turned palm out yet. It's about maybe palm down by this time. Around this moment, I'm going to take my step out, and then it continues to rotate palm out and withdraw. And it's going to withdraw as though it was protecting the side of the head. sort of floating right above the temple, somewhere in between the ear and the forehead, right here at the side there. By the way, it's not too close either. There is a space in here, and that space is another bow, like a bow and arrow. So it's rounded. It's an arc. I'm trying to see if I can get a real good camera angle here so you can see that space in there. So that is what's drawn back. Meanwhile, the left hand, which was down by the hip when you were in needle at the C bottom, first comes over and lays itself right on the forearm of the right arm. So the left hand is laid on the forearm. The right arm is rising up. And then as I take that step out, remember the right hand withdraws, and simultaneously the left hand strikes forward. So kind of like single whip, where you've got energy going in two directions. Here I've got energy here and energy here. They stretch out. Here in fanning through the back or sliding through the back, I've got energy going in two directions at the same time. So the right hand is turning palm out and withdrawing. The left hand is extending straight forward. To drive all of that, we've got the turning of the body, the waist and hips, the torso movement here. We start out pretty square. In needle to C bottom, the hips are fairly squared off. As I step out, though, it begins as I start to rise up. I'm already slightly letting my body turn towards the right, but not a whole lot yet, because you want to save some of that for the step. And then as it really turns to 45 degrees, that's going to pull this right arm back. That's how this withdraws. Gets the body turned, withdraws its hand, and at the same time throws this left hand forward. Okay, so it's coming up, throws the left hand out while withdrawing the right hand. Lots of pieces there. But basically, if you notice what I'm doing, here's each layer. I've got a footwork layer, I've got a hand and arm layer, and I've got a bodywork layer. Now later on we'll talk about head and eyes and tension and all that kind of stuff. But I think right now 3 layers is plenty for each lesson. All right, now I'm going to change the video back, and let's take a look at this movement one more time from a couple of different angles. Here we are at the end of needle at the C bottom. I stand up, take my step, turn. One more time from a different angle, facing this direction. Needle at the C bottom. And there you have it, Shunt Bombay, fanning through the back. So today's question of the day didn't actually come from a viewer. It came from some topics we were talking about in my other Tai Chi classes. By the way, in case you didn't know it, outside of the YouTube videos that I make here, I actually run a full-time Tai Chi academy. Our academy is one of the first, maybe the first, but one of the first certainly, to conduct all of its classes entirely online. Now, it's not just recorded video like you're seeing right here. They're actually live and interactive, but our students come from all over the world, and so we literally have people from Canada and the US and the UK and Belgium, etc., all in class at the same time, that they log in from their homes and then they take class with me. So in this class, one of the topics we were talking about is how similar many of the movements in Tai Chi look, but they're not the same movement, or there's some variation that makes them significantly different in some important way. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, and the movements that I picked to compare are the movements raise hands and play pipa. Now, just so that you can see the difference here, raise hands is typically done like this, and play the pipa is done like this. And you might ask yourself, wow, it looks just like you're doing the same movement, only you got one foot forward and you got the other foot forward. And in a way, you'd be right, but in a very important way, you'd be wrong. Now, there's a principle involved here that I want to introduce to you, and it's the principle of what we call opening and closing. So opening and closing is a fundamental action
in Tai Chi as a martial art as well as in an energetic practice. The gates of the body that guide the chi through your limbs and torso and head and spine and everything are always opening and closing. But in the external part of your body, as a martial art, you're always opening and closing distances, opening and closing joints, opening and closing muscles, right? But we might take a look at movements that open and close in different ways. Now, one more thing about opening and closing, I might say, there's an interesting passage in the Tai Chi Classics which says, at the end of the day, once you strip everything out, Tai Chi is nothing more than empty and full, like, where's my weight? Empty and full, and open and close. So when you've mastered those two actions, you've kind of got Tai Chi in the bag here. So we have open and close. And you can kind of see, as I do this action, that this is an opening here. You can see the hands are coming apart, the chest is opening, the energy is getting bigger, this is open. And then when they come drawing back together, this is closing. In raise hands, we have a opening and closing in exactly that fashion. Raise hands in the long form here first appears at the end of single whip. So I come back. Now watch this action. As I step down with my empty step, the two hands come together, closing. They're coming from an open position to a closing position, right? Now the nature of that opening and closing, as you can see, is horizontal, coming from side to side into the middle. So let's take a look at play pipa and see if we can see a difference. Play pipa first gets introduced from the end of brush knee and push here. Right? I'm going to do that facing the camera so that you can see something, see if you can catch it here. From brush knee, okay. Brush knee and push. It's also an opening and closing, but it's a vertical opening and closing. We have one hand coming up and one hand coming down, and then the two come from apart on a vertical plane and close down this way. In a way, the end result for the opponent might be the same thing. It's often a trap of the arm, a joint lock, a way of catching or trapping the other opponent's weapons so that you can take that out of play and then do your thing. You're always trying to find a leverage point so that you can exert leverage onto your opponent and knock them over or knock them to the ground. That's the kind of martial art that Tai Chi is. But you want to catch that, you want to be versatile. You want to be able to open and close and catch and trap, etc. from almost any angle. So raise hands and play the pipa look very similar, but they're executing the technique in very fundamentally different ways, from horizontal to vertical. And that's the main difference between raise hands and play the pipa. All right, there you go. If you've got a question like this, if you see another pair of movements that you want to compare, please write it down in the comment section below. I chose this one just because it was on my mind. It wasn't because I didn't have plenty of other questions coming from you guys. And that brings me to saying thank you very much for continuing to ask such awesome questions. You'll see them appearing in these video lessons in the future, I promise. If you want me to explain another movement or go over anything, similarly, just go ahead and write it down there. I love responding to that. It's a lot of fun, and it really brings out more life into the lesson. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do about subscribing. And if you haven't already done so, like, shame on you. You should just subscribe the first time you watch. Hit the little bell right next to the subscribe button, because that notifies you when a new video gets posted. This one will be posted in the morning, and you usually will see the 100 Days videos posting around 6 a.m. my time, West Coast time. Hit the share button, because if you like what you see, I would really appreciate it very much if you'd share it with somebody else. Let them know what you're enjoying, and maybe they'll enjoy it too. And since I've been talking about the classes that I teach at the online academy, if you'd ever like to be a guest in the online academy, all you got to do is send me a message, and I'll send you a one-time link, and you can come in and check it out. Who knows, maybe you'll want to tune into the academy as well. That's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much. It's really a pleasure. I'm having a great time doing this. I'll see you in tomorrow's lesson. Be well.